The sound of heels echoed through the narrow hallway leading to Courtroom 2B. Inside, a crowd of spectators murmured softly, their attention drawn to the tall figure of Judge Judith Sheindlin, who was reviewing a stack of papers at her bench. Her sharp eyes scanned the room before glancing toward the plaintiff and defendant's tables. The case had already stirred curiosity among the audience. On one side sat Angela Thornton, a well-dressed, no-nonsense small business owner in her 40s. Across from her sat Kimberly Dwyer, a stocky woman in her early 30s with a defensive posture, arms crossed tightly against her chest. Kimberly's bleached hair was tied up in a messy bun, her lipstick uneven, and her expression radiated pure annoyance. The bailiff, Petrie Hawkinsburg, stood between them. His voice carried over the chatter, "All rise. This is case number 212, Thornton versus Dwyer." The room fell silent. Judge Judy stepped forward, her robe flowing slightly as she took her seat. "Be seated," she said firmly. Her tone, clipped and unmistakable, commanded instant obedience. Angela straightened her back, clutching her folder of receipts. Kimberly, on the other hand, rolled her eyes as she slumped into her chair. Judge Judy glanced down at the paperwork. "Ms. Thornton, you're suing Ms. Dwyer for $75,000 in damages related to a failed event planning contract. Is that correct?" "Yes, Your Honor," Angela replied. Her voice was steady but filled with tension. "I own a small company that organizes corporate events. Ms. Dwyer hired us for her catering business's anniversary gala, but she breached the contract." "I didn't breach anything," Kimberly interrupted, her voice loud enough to make several people in the audience wince. "She's the one who messed everything up." Judge Judy raised an eyebrow, her pen freezing midair. "You'll have a turn to speak, Ms. Dwyer. Don't interrupt again." Kimberly leaned back, muttering under her breath. "Whatever." Angela took a deep breath and continued, "We agreed that she would pay a 50% deposit up front. She sent a personal check for $37,500, which bounced twice. I tried to contact her, but she ignored me. By the time she responded, the event venue had been released to another client. I incurred significant losses because of her." Judge Judy's gaze shifted to Kimberly. "Ms. Dwyer, did you send a check that bounced?" Kimberly smirked. "Yeah, but it was a mistake. My bank froze my account for no reason. It's not my fault." "It's not your fault?" Judge Judy repeated, her voice dripping with disbelief. "Whose fault is it when your account doesn't have sufficient funds?" Kimberly shrugged. "The bank's, maybe? They mess up all the time. I told her I'd fix it." Angela interjected, "She didn't. She ghosted me for 3 months." "That's not true," Kimberly snapped. "You're being dramatic. You had plenty of time to find someone else." Judge Judy leaned forward. "Ms. Dwyer, let's stay focused on the facts. Did you sign a written agreement?" "Yes. And in that agreement, it states the deposit is non-refundable and that failure to pay on time constitutes breach of contract, correct?" Kimberly hesitated. "I guess." "You guess?" Judy pressed. "You either did or you didn't." Kimberly's eyes darted around. "Yeah, okay, whatever, I did." Judge Judy scribbled something down. "All right. So you admit you breached the contract?" Kimberly threw up her hands. "I didn't breach anything. She paused, shaking her head, "had issues. Everyone's got issues." Judge Judy's tone grew icier. "You're not helping yourself, Ms. Dwyer." The courtroom was quiet for a moment. Angela remained composed, while Kimberly fidgeted in her seat, visibly agitated. The tension in the air was thick enough to slice with a knife. "Miss Thornton," Judy said, turning to the plaintiff again, "please explain how you reached the $75,000 figure." Angela opened a binder, neatly organized with invoices and emails. "I had already ordered materials, rented equipment, and made down payments for vendors. Once she stopped responding, I had to cancel everything. The cancellation fees and lost business added up to $68,000. The rest covers administrative and legal costs. Judge Judy nodded. I see documentation for most of that. These look legitimate. She turned her gaze back to Kimberly. Do you have proof that you attempted to resolve this issue in good faith? Kimberly scoffed. Why would I? She's exaggerating everything. Look, Judge. Excuse me, Judge Judy interrupted sharply. You will refer to me as Your Honor. Kimberly rolled her eyes. Fine. Your Honor. Whatever. There was a collective gasp from the audience. Bird raised an eyebrow but remained silent. Judge Judy, however, froze completely for 2 seconds, her eyes narrowing ever so slightly. Ms. Dwyer, she said, her voice low but deadly calm. Do you know where you are? Yeah, a TV courtroom, Kimberly said smugly. Not like this is a real court, right? A murmur rippled through the audience. Judge Judy's expression hardened. Wrong. This is a real arbitration, and the decision made here is legally binding. You do well to remember that. Angela shifted uncomfortably in her seat, sensing where this was going. Kimberly, oblivious to the danger, continued her tirade. Honestly, I think you're just getting worked up for no reason, Kimberly said, waving her hand dismissively. Maybe you should calm your hormones or something. The courtroom collectively gasped. Even Bird's eyes widened. For a moment, time seemed to stop. Judge Judy sat completely still, her face unreadable. Angela's mouth fell open. She couldn't believe what she'd just heard. The spectators whispered to each other in disbelief, some hiding smiles, others waiting for the inevitable explosion. Judge Judy finally leaned forward, her voice so calm it was chilling. Excuse me? Kimberly, clearly unaware of the gravity of her words, doubled down. I'm just saying, maybe you're overreacting. You don't have to snap at me just because you're, hormonal. The silence was absolute. Judge Judy set down her pen, folded her hands, and stared directly at Kimberly. Ms. Dwyer, she began slowly, I have presided over thousands of cases. I have heard every excuse, every insult, every attempt to weasel out of accountability. But rarely have I encountered someone so catastrophically unaware of how to behave in a courtroom. Kimberly blinked. What's that supposed to mean? It means, Judy said, her tone rising just a hair, that your attitude has just cost you something far greater than your dignity. Angela couldn't help but glance at Bird, who shook his head slightly as if to say, she's done for. Judge Judy turned to her notes again, writing something quickly. Then she looked up. Here's what's going to happen. I'm reviewing the documentation provided by Miss Thornton, and every piece of evidence supports her claim. You, Ms. Dwyer, have failed to honor your contractual obligations, failed to provide payment, and failed to demonstrate any good faith in resolving the matter. Kimberly tried to interrupt, but Judy raised her hand sharply. Quiet. You've spoken enough. But not another word. The gavel came down hard on the bench. The echo of which striking would made Kimberly flinch. Her smirk vanished. Judgment for the plaintiff in the amount of $75,000, Judy declared. Kimberly's jaw dropped. Wait, what? You can't. I can, Judy interrupted coldly. And I just did. You disrespected this court, you disrespected the process, and you disrespected me. Consider this a lesson in humility. Angela's eyes filled with relief. She covered her mouth, trying not to cry in front of the cameras. Bird gave her a reassuring nod. Kimberly stood up abruptly, face flushed red. This is ridiculous. You can't just. Bird stepped forward, towering over her. Ma'am, you need to step back. I'm not going anywhere. She's crazy. Judge Judy's tone cut through the commotion. You're dismissed, Ms. Dwyer. That's the end of it. But Kimberly couldn't let it go. You're all just jealous. Everyone here's against me because I speak my mind. Berg gestured toward the exit. Let's go. As Kimberly stormed toward the door, still muttering curses under her breath, Judge Judy leaned back in her chair and let out a small sigh. Some people, she said quietly, learn the hard way. The audience erupted into quiet murmurs as the credits music began to play in the background. But the tension hadn't yet lifted. Kimberly's meltdown backstage was only beginning, and before the episode was over, she would find out that losing $75,000 was just the start of her troubles. The hallway outside the courtroom was buzzing with tension as the crew packed up cables and microphones. The plaintiff, Angela Thornton, stood off to the side, quietly talking with a producer who congratulated her on the outcome. The relief on her face was unmistakable. Across the hall, however, Kimberly Dwyer was a storm waiting to erupt. Her cheeks were still flushed from embarrassment, and her breathing came in short, angry bursts. She yanked off the microphone clip to her blouse and slammed it into the hands of a startled production assistant. "I can't believe this," she barked, pacing back and forth. "That woman is insane. Who does she think she is, humiliating me on national television like that?" The assistant hesitated, unsure whether to respond. "Ma'am, Judge Judy is." "I don't care who she is," Kimberly snapped. "She's just some old woman who likes hearing herself talk. I swear, this is so unfair." Another crew member approached with a clipboard. "Ms. Dwyer, we need you to sign a few release forms before you go." Kimberly snatched the pen from his hand, scribbling furiously. "You people are all the same," she muttered. "Set me up to look like the bad guy." In the distance, the doors to the courtroom swung open. Judge Judy stepped out with her usual brisk stride, still wearing her robe. She was speaking quietly to Bird, who carried a folder under one arm. Her face remained composed, though there was a glint in her eyes, a mixture of irritation and amusement. Bird noticed Kimberly fuming a few yards away and gave Judy a subtle look. "You sure you want to walk through there?" he asked under his breath. "I'm not afraid of loud people," Judy replied dryly. "They run out of steam eventually." Kimberly froze when she saw the judge approaching. For a split second, she looked almost unsure of herself. Then, her defiance returned. "Oh, great. Here comes the queen herself." Judge Judy stopped, fixing her with a stare so sharp that even the camera crew nearby went silent. "Ms. Dwyer," she said coolly, "I suggest you choose your next words carefully." "Oh, I'm not afraid of you," Kimberly shot back. "You think you can just ruin someone's reputation because you've got a robe on? You're nothing but a bully in fancy clothes." Bird crossed his arms, watching closely in case the situation escalated. But Judy didn't move, didn't even flinch. She simply folded her hands in front of her and said, "A bully, Ms. Dwyer, is someone who refuses to take responsibility and lashes out when the truth becomes uncomfortable. That's what you did in there." Kimberly scoffed. "Please. You made me look like some kind of monster. You didn't even let me defend myself." "I gave you every opportunity," Judy replied. "You wasted them insulting the court and using phrases that would make any decent person cringe." "Oh, come on," Kimberly said, waving her hand dismissively. "It was just a joke. You people need to lighten up." "Calm your hormones was a joke?" Judy asked, tilting her head slightly. Kimberly rolled her eyes. "It's just something people say. Don't take it so personally." Judy's lips curved into a small, tight smile. "Ms. Dwyer, that kind of language doesn't make you clever, it makes you small. And I suspect that's been your problem for a very long time." Kimberly's bravado flickered for the first time. "You don't know me." "Oh, but I do," Judy said softly. "I've met thousands of people like you. People who mistake arrogance for confidence. People who think respect is something you only give when it's convenient. You want to know what truly happened in that courtroom? You didn't lose because of your check or your contract. You lost because you couldn't stop talking long enough to listen." For a moment, Kimberly had no comeback. Her jaw opened, then closed again. The sting of the words hit her harder than she wanted to admit. Judy started to walk away, but then she paused and glanced back over her shoulder. "You'll get your settlement papers in the mail. I suggest you start saving. That $75,000 won't pay itself." Kimberly glared at her retreating figure. "I'll appeal this. You'll see." Bird let out a quiet chuckle. "Ma'am, that's not how arbitration works." "Whatever," she muttered, snatching her purse from a chair. "This is a joke. All of it." Angela, who had been standing quietly with her documents, finally approached, holding out a hand. "Ms. Dwyer," she said gently, "maybe this could be a lesson." "Lesson?" Kimberly snapped. "You're lucky she likes you. If she hadn't been biased, you'd be the one paying me." Angela sighed and pulled her hand back. "Some people just don't change." As Angela walked away toward the exit, the crew began dismantling the set. Kimberly sat down on a bench, her shoulders slumped, her mind replaying the moment she'd said those words, "Calm your hormones." She hadn't thought twice about it at the time. It had felt clever, defiant. But now, it echoed in her head like a curse she'd brought on herself. Her phone buzzed. A notification from social media. Out of curiosity, she opened it, and immediately regretted it. The episode had already aired in the East Coast time zone. Clips of her outburst were circulating online. Someone had turned her "calm your hormones" comment into a viral meme. The top comments were brutal. "Imagine disrespecting Judge Judy like that, she ate her alive." $75,000 lesson in humility. Worth every penny. Karen energy on full display. Kimberly's stomach twisted. She tried scrolling past the comments, but the more she read, the worse it got. Within hours, her name had become shorthand for entitlement. A producer approached cautiously. "Ms. Dwyer, your ride's here." She looked up, eyes red with frustration. "Yeah, whatever." When she stepped outside into the parking lot, the glare of the afternoon sun hit her face. Cameras were waiting. A couple of local reporters had caught wind of the story and were hoping for a reaction. "Ms. Dwyer, do you regret what you said to Judge Judy?" one of them shouted. Kimberly shielded her face. "No comment." "Is it true you have to pay the full $75,000? Another asked. She ignored them, rushing toward the waiting car. Inside, she slumped against the seat, staring blankly out the window as the vehicle pulled away. For the first few minutes, she stayed silent. Then, almost to herself, she muttered, "This isn't fair. I just spoke my mind." The driver, an older man who'd probably seen plenty of reality TV meltdowns before, glanced at her in the mirror. "Ma'am, sometimes speaking your mind costs more than keeping it shut." She shot him a glare. "Mind your business." He didn't respond, but his point lingered. Back at her small apartment, Kimberly dropped her purse on the couch and sank into her chair. Her cat jumped up beside her, meowing softly. She absently petted it while staring at the muted television. Judge Judy's face appeared again in a promo for the show, the same calm authority she had just witnessed in person. She felt something heavy in her chest, not quite anger this time, more like realization. For the first time, she wondered if maybe, just maybe, she really had gone too far. Over the following weeks, the financial reality hit hard. Letters arrived from lawyers and collections departments. The arbitration ruling meant she had to pay Angela in full, and soon. She tried calling the production company, begging for leniency, but they reminded her that she had signed binding paperwork. Her catering business began to lose clients. The viral clip had damaged her reputation beyond repair. People recognized her at the grocery store, whispering behind her back. Someone even filmed her arguing with a cashier, posting it online with the caption, "Judge Judy's $75,000 Karen strikes again." One night, she sat alone at her kitchen table, staring at a stack of bills. The anger that had once fueled her now felt hollow. Her reflection in the dark window looked tired, older somehow. She whispered softly, "Why did I have to say that?" She remembered the look on Judge Judy's face, not furious, not insulted, but disappointed. It wasn't just about the comment, it was about the lack of respect, the unwillingness to listen. That realization stung more than the financial loss ever could. Months later, Angela received her final payment. The debt had been cleared. She donated a portion of it to a mentorship program for young women in business, smiling when a news anchor mentioned it on a local segment. When asked about the case, she simply said, "Some lessons are expensive, but necessary." Meanwhile, Kimberly kept a low profile. She deleted her social media accounts and tried to rebuild her life one small step at a time. The internet had moved on, but the echo of that courtroom moment never quite faded. Years later, during an interview celebrating Judge Judy's long career, the host brought up the infamous case. That clip where the woman told you to calm your hormones went viral. Do you remember her? Judge Judy smiled faintly. Of course I do. You don't forget moments like that. The host chuckled. Do you ever think about what happened to her? Judy's eyes softened for a moment. I hope she learned something. Respect isn't about fear, it's about understanding you're not the center of the universe. The audience applauded, and the host moved to the next question. But for a brief second, Judy's mind drifted back to that courtroom, the arrogance, the insult, and the silence that followed it. She had seen it all before: pride, denial, collapse, redemption. Some people learn through reason. Others needed consequences. Kimberly Dwyer had learned through both. And though she'd lost $75,000 that day, she eventually gained something she'd never had before: perspective. For the first time in her life, she realized that respect, once lost, is the most expensive thing to buy back. And sometimes, it takes one unforgettable sentence, delivered in a courtroom, to teach it.